Okay, welcome everybody. We're going to take a minute here to let everybody in the Zoom room. Welcome to those of you on YouTube that have found us on CCTV. Just taking a second to make sure we've got everything open and that we're recording the webinar. Getting all my tech in place. This is going to be more of a technical kind of show today. Thanks to all of you who for joining us. I'm seeing some teachers here joining, likely some parents. I know I've sent this out to parents as well. And what I want to do today is, first of all, share my screen so you can see my slideshow. And I want to talk about what we can do to improve the quality of hosting Zoom exams for acoustic pianos for our students, whether it's your child or whether it's one of your students. And I've got a number of things I want to mention today in that regard. I'm just going to start my slideshow here. So hosting Zoom exams, this will only be about a half hour, maybe a little bit less if I don't get too detailed, but I've got a few things in store for us today to go over the tech. Back in 2020, when the pandemic hit all of a sudden in late March, we got on webinars like this with teachers across the country to educate them and support them in their efforts to teach online and keep music lessons going. It was hugely successful. It was amazing to see the group of all of us out there doing studio teaching, be able to connect with our students. And, you know, anecdotally, we know that most students, it was the one activity they could still count on were their piano lessons. And so we went through and decided that Zoom would be a good platform. Many people were trying other things like Skype and FaceTime. But what we learned is that Zoom had a few advantages, and it became the standard for doing CC exams online during the pandemic and still continues to this day. And so some more history, we started doing online exams in 2007 using a piece of MIDI software called Internet MIDI. We still do that. And that to me is still one of the best solutions that we have. But you need digital pianos to connect with each other to share the sounds. A good alternative to that for those of you that have acoustic pianos and want to use those in exams, and I understand how that goes, that's what I do as well in my teaching studio, is to use Zoom. And so it's long overdue that we have a little refresher to talk about the technology and how it's changed since those initial webinars in April 2020. We had a couple of technical documents that we posted on our website, and I'll show you and refer back to those today because the information contained in those is still largely true, even though there have been some advancements in the technology. Actually, not all that much. So our agenda today, we're going to talk about the exam choices, either Zoom or MIDI software, and talk about what each one means, registering for online exams and what that means going forward with Conservatory Canada, testing your own connectivity, which is a big thing, the word test, you're going to hear me come back to a lot today. Talk about some of the hardware options available for your different devices and microphones and that kind of thing. And then I'll review in detail the audio settings and hopefully give you a little sample of different devices and how they might sound and how the settings changes things. If any of you have any questions at any point, the live audience here, the bunch of you that are there on Zoom webinar with me that have registered for this, feel free to throw them in the chat box or the Q&A. If you're watching the live stream on YouTube, I won't see those questions, but feel free to email us at the end. I have contact information if you have questions about this. And then my thought was to record a really good webinar here over about 20 or 30 minutes, and that we could all share this with our students, with families, so that they can get an idea if they want to host Zoom exams from their home. They should be watching this so that they have an idea of how to play around with these audio settings and just how much is at stake. And they can see from the examples that I'm going to give today what difference different settings and setups make. By and large, what we are finding is that about half of well, first of all, 70% of all students want their exam online now. That shocks us a little bit, but that's something the pandemic has done for us. We are still doing in-person exams, or we've returned to them recently last February and more largely last June, and that's only about 30% of our students. The 70% that want online exams, most of them are using Zoom, most of them are using acoustic pianos, and by and large, I'd say about half of those are not broadcasting the best audio that they can. And so I have a number of different thoughts about that, and that was the impetus behind this session today, to see if we can either improve the audio quality, or whether it's just us pleading to teachers and to families, let's try and find a better solution in terms of where to host these. Maybe the teacher, we know a lot of teachers are taking on the responsibility to host the Zoom exams at their teaching studio. In some cases, that's not perhaps feasible. But I'm here to encourage those teachers that are making that effort to have good equipment in their teaching studios. That plea goes to families to please use and take advantage of the teacher studio. They've got it set up. They've done a lot of testing, and hopefully I can show you today how important that is and what difference that can make in terms of what the examiner is hearing. We're finding right now, sometimes we have to spend 5 or 10 minutes at the beginning of every exam coming from a student's home to figure out what the best device is and what the best settings are. And we can't afford that kind of time all the time. And that's something that we should research ahead of time. So acoustic pianos, in short, use the Zoom exam. The digital pianos can use Zoom or MIDI software, which we have access to through Time Warp Technologies. The software is available for $39 US. You install it on a laptop, and it allows you to connect the laptop to your digital piano. The software also engages with a remote examiner somewhere else in the world, within Canada generally, but we have done exams from other countries in the world. It works very well. And what it effectively does is the software bridges the two digital instruments so that you can share sounds. Whatever the student plays on their digital piano comes out of the examiner's digital piano as if they're sitting right there in the room. We can't tell the difference. It effectively takes over my digital piano so that I can hear perfectly what's happening. In an ideal world, that's the best solution in terms of audio quality for us to hear exactly what a student is doing and trying to express. The only drawback there I find in my own teaching studio as well is that I don't run lessons on the digital piano. My students are used to the acoustic piano. So I do a little bit of a hybrid myself where I use Zoom like we're going to hear today. I have good audio settings, good internet connectivity, good hardware, external microphone, etc., so that I can best capture the sound. It's not as good as the internet MIDI software sound that we get, but it's pretty good. We can hear all the expressive nuance and detail. And then I use the internet MIDI software for the ear training, something that is also quite limited on Zoom. And if you're just running a Zoom exam from your home, the biggest detriment to not investigating these settings ahead of time is when it comes to ear training. Your child is going to notice a difference in terms of the quality, and the examiner can't always hear the ear training and things very clearly in terms of what the student is answering back with. So the software is available for $39 US from Time Warp Tech. I'm just going to show you what that looks like. So I'm not going to spend too much time with that today. But I'm just going to go into here and show you where that website is. timewarptech.com. You go to products, scroll down to Internet MIDI. They've got a number of interesting products there. You'll hear us talk about SuperScore and SuperScore music all the time in different webinars here on different Fridays. This is the software. $39.50 actually is the US dollar price. That's about half of what it used to cost before the pandemic. Add to cart. And then once you add it to cart, you go ahead and check out, and then you get a download link there. You can download it to your device, whether it's a Mac or a Windows product. It is available for both streams. And that allows you, we can help you with some of the setup in terms of how to integrate that with the software itself. And let's see, I have the software loaded up here. I'm just going to show you what this screen looks like. Initiating with my cursor, if I'm playing my digital piano, we can see the keys light up. The examiner will hear that perfectly coming out of their keyboard, but there is a visual interface where the examiner can see which keys are being played. It can see how the pedals are being used, and it has velocity indicators, so we can actually see as well as hear how loud or soft things are intending. There's quiet. When it's louder, more colors light up those velocity indicators. That's just in a nutshell how this all works. It's quite feature rich. A lot of these things you don't have to understand or know about, but we can guide you through how to set up the software. It's a great recording device too, to record from the digital piano, and students can play back and watch their dynamic expression levels being highlighted on the keyboard. So that's a little bit about Internet MIDI. I won't come back to that. What I want to talk today mostly about is the Zoom software and how to use that, because that's the preferred choice by about 90% of you that are doing online exams. Any questions about the MIDI software? We do have something on our website. Maybe I'll show you where that is as well. From our website, you can go to All About E-Exams in the upper left-hand menu here. Let's see if I can find it. Well, that's interesting. Why can't I find it? It must be in this other menu. I guess we've moved it. Exams, All About E-Exams here. And we've got a whole page dedicated with videos and everything from a long time ago, back in 2007, when we first started doing this, that talks about the e-exam process and how that software works. So if you're curious at all about that, have a look at that part on our website. Okay, back to presentation then. When it comes to registering for exams going forward, we have two options. Most students are now registering for a flex exam at any time of the year with 2 to 4 weeks notice, depending on the time of year. Most of the year, it's a 2-week notice, and you can hold the exam anytime whenever the student's ready. When it starts getting into May and June, we like to recommend that you allow 4 weeks notice if you want a specific date, because we're quite busy at that time. If students want an online exam, they have to register for a flex practical exam now in our database, and that's going to become clearer in the coming year here as students register through our new portals. If a student wants an in-person exam on one of our seasonal dates, these are the spring or the winter session, either winter in February, spring in June, they have to register for one of those sessions specifically, and that'll become clearer on our website as well. You can also have an in-person exam on a flex basis in certain locales, and I've published some information that on some of your emails you've seen lately, what centers we are currently prepared to have an in-person examiner where you would visit their studio in a particular center. That number of centers is growing, and so that's a nice option as well for those of you that want the in-person exam but aren't available at those seasonal times of year. Now, setting up for Zoom exams, number one, you want to use your best device. And for some people, it's not always clear what this is. And when I get to a student sometimes who's trying to do the exam on an iPhone, and I can't hear anything, and I'll demonstrate later why and what that looks like. I say, okay, what's your next best device? And we plug in an iPad, and that works a little better, but then the parent comes out with a nice new laptop and sets that up, and everything's happy. Then that's an obvious choice that you want to research ahead of time. Sometimes it's the best laptop you have. Sometimes it's the MacBook. Sometimes it's the PC. Sometimes I've seen where the iPhone is the best choice in the house because of the way that microphone on that particular device works. And I've seen all sorts of crazy things where it's a brand new MacBook and that microphone sounds like it's underwater no matter how we set things. We pull the iPhone out, the 2-year-old iPhone, and it works better just for capturing audio. You never know exactly which best one is. And I'm just convinced after having this problem many times with students that each piece of hardware is at the mercy of that microphone. It's very tiny. Sometimes there may be a couple of specks of dust in there or something. That's often what it sounds like. Or the mic placement is in a funny location underneath the laptop and it just won't capture the piano audio or the voice audio the way we want it to. So number one is test all the devices in the house with your teacher ahead of time in some kind of lesson format, so that you can determine which is the best device. It's not always the brand new laptop that costs $2,000. Check your internet connectivity using a speed test. I'll show you what I've done here today. I often have this speedtest.net page open. I ran a test earlier because I'm actually hardwired now. I'm not always hardwired because I have really, as you can see, very strong internet, 891 megabits per second download, and my upload is 238 megabits per second. That's lightning fast. Those are almost gigabit speeds, really, is what I pay for here. It's a bit overkill for what you would need for an exam. We recommend if you can get somewhere around 300 megabits per second, you're in pretty good shape. If you're getting 100 megabits per second, we've seen that work, but your hardware better be good, and you probably are better off to have an external mic in that situation. Most people nowadays are paying for 300 megabits per second. You can have multiple people streaming at the same time in your home without losing speed, and during a piano exam or a voice exam would work very well. Just to give you an idea, I'll unplug my hardwired situation. Run this test again, instead of 800 megabits per second, now I'm just going on Wi-Fi. I'm not hardwired anymore. Let's see what we come up with in terms of internet connectivity. And again, if anyone has any questions or needs me to slow down, feel free to throw those in the chat box. Everyone else is going to watch this live later or watch the replay later on YouTube, and I'll show you where that is. You can see here, I'm only getting about half of what I had. This will probably peak somewhere around 500 megabits per second. No, it's not even going to reach 500 today. I had it reaching 500 earlier. Upload speed's very similar, however. It's very close to the hardwired situation, but just simply hardwiring your internet to the Ethernet cable. This one's quite long. It's actually running to a jack on the other side of the wall here, and that's going all through the house before it hits the router again. If I had a shorter cable that goes directly to my router here, which is only about 3 feet away, that may even give me a little bit more than 891 that I was getting earlier. So you can see even at that on Wi-Fi, it doesn't really change my connection to you, my audio, as an extra security blanket, even at these speeds, to make sure if you're only running 100 megabits per second, that's going to be a little bit more essential, I would think, in terms of increasing your ability to connect with an examiner and broadcast good quality audio. Consider using an external mic if necessary. We'll talk about that. Get familiar with Zoom audio settings. I'm going to walk you through that. and then test with the teacher or someone ahead of time to determine what is the best hardware and audio configuration setup for you in your environment. Okay, next, tips for increasing connection speed. Either consider upgrading your internet plan, even temporarily. Some companies will let you tag on an extra, get up to 300 megabits per second for a week or a couple of days, and you cancel it. I'm sure that's possible. Hardwire the laptop to the router if possible. I've already talked about that. Move the router closer to the action if possible. My router is very close here. I actually have it in a Faraday cage, so it's not radiating all sorts of microwaves at me and things. That cuts down on some of the invisible pollution that we can't see. But a lot of people have their router in the basement or upstairs or in a closet. Sometimes it's on a longer cable and can be moved a little bit. That can make a big difference if you're relying on Wi-Fi to make your connection, and that can give you a lot of extra connectivity. Walk around with your mobile device and just do that speed test in different locations on Wi-Fi through the home. Take it outside, see what happens. The walls make a difference. And so that kind of thing, if you have the ability to move the router and get it closer to the piano, that can really help quite a bit in an exam situation. Reserve all internet traffic for the exam. If you have someone else streaming something or holding a meeting in another room on the same Wi-Fi signal, that's going to cut your signal considerably. And I've seen that ruin exams more often than I want to admit, actually. And so when you mention that to people and they cut off that traffic, boom, all of a sudden the exam picks up and I can hear everything much more clearly as an examiner. Check all devices to see which responds best. I can't say that enough. And then consider using the teacher studio if possible. I know we have mostly teachers here live today. I'd love to hear from you what feel free to throw your anecdotes in the chat box to add a little bit to what I'm saying. I like these to be interactive where possible, these sessions. What's your experience in hosting Zoom exams from your studio, and why do you consider to do that? I'd love to hear from you. Okay, Zoom audio settings. This is what I wanted to spend a little bit more time on today, because this is what our examiners are walking through and spending an extra 5 or 10 minutes with students at the beginning of the exam. And we're a little bit surprised at this point that we're having to do that, honestly. And maybe I'll show you where these technical documents are on the website so that those of you watching now or after the fact here on replay can know where that is. So from our home page, it's a little trickier to find, but under latest news, I click on read more news. And that's going to take me to a page where we've got more news items here. And if you scroll down a little bit, we've got a Zoom online exam guide from May of 2020. There's a better one, though, even below June 2020 online exam FAQ, is Guide to Improve Audio Quality in Zoom. I wrote this in April of 2020. I have to click on it twice, more or less here. And then up comes a really great technical document. Most of the stuff in here is still technically accurate. Some of the instructions might be different. These need a little bit of an edit, but it goes through in a fair bit of detail exactly all the considerations and everything that I'm going to talk about today, and how to get to these audio settings, the importance of the connection speed, the importance of improving audio with an external mic, how to set up the webcam so that we can see the student nicely, making you aware that there's an audio delay, talking about mid exams, all that kind of stuff. And so that's a great little thing to check. And maybe what I'm going to do is let's take this page. I'm just going to put that in the chat box for those of you with me live so you can link to that more easily. So there's that link there for those of you in the chat box that want to see that now and have that bookmark in case you're not able to find it later. Okay, so Zoom audio settings. What I'd like to do is figure out how to keep sharing my screen. And I'm wondering, I suspect, given what I'm seeing on mine, because I have 3 devices going here, that you can't see my audio settings screen, which is unfortunate. Even though I've got it open here, because I'm sharing my screen within Zoom, Zoom won't let me share that. Let me see if there's another way here. It used to let me do that. No, it's not going to let me do it. So what I'll do is I'll talk you through it here, and you can try this out on your own when you're in an actual meeting. You could even, those of you live, or those of you, you can just open a Zoom personal room meeting or whatever you want with no one even there, and you can still figure these things out on your own. So when you open the settings, I'm just going to get back to my slideshow here as well. At the top is a speaker input level. Don't worry about that. In the middle is a microphone section. And the first checkbox I look at is automatically adjust microphone volume. And that's usually checked. Zoom is there, changing the audio to match the spoken voice and make sure you can hear it. For music, though, that's just absolutely tragic. It doesn't allow us to hear the piano at all because the Zoom audio is compressing it for voice and it's not hearing the piano very well. So the first thing I get students to do is uncheck that. And as soon as I uncheck that, there's a little volume slider that controls your mic input level right above that checkbox that allows you to raise and lower the audio input. So right now, you're hearing my voice disappear as I lower that volume. And then now you're hearing my voice come back as I'm sliding that volume slider back up to maximum. When I uncheck automatically adjust microphone volume, it now becomes a manual adjustment that you have to make. And you'll see that there. And we get students to do this when we're doing exams. Below that is an audio profile section where it says Zoom optimized audio. You can do that. I have that unchecked myself, but then below that, original sound for musicians is usually not highlighted. We want that to be highlighted on the exam. It's the only chance we're going to have to really hear a student well. I see. When Zoom optimized audio is highlighted, you can't select original sound. As soon as you select original sound for musicians, 3 other checkboxes open. One is high fidelity music mode. I don't use that because that takes a lot of computer resources, and we're not noticing any difference in tests on using that feature. Echo cancellation and stereo auto I have checked, not a big deal. Nothing in the advanced tab at the bottom to really worry about. So big thing is automatically adjust microphone volume is unchecked. You adjust your volume slider where it needs to be, and I'll show you what difference that can make. Original sound for musicians has to be highlighted. And when I exit out of audio settings, in the top left corner of the screen, I'm going to see a little bar that says original sound turn on or original sound turn off. I'm going to turn my original sound. Right now it's off because I'm optimized for speaking. I'm going to turn my original sound on right now. And you'll notice that my talking voice probably has changed a little bit. All the little audio tests I'm going to do today, I haven't verified myself. You're going to hear these live. And please feel free to tell me in the chat box to give me some feedback what you're hearing on your end, those of you that are here in the live audience. Those of you that are watching after, as you hear the audio changes, just note that it's going to be a little different than what we're doing live because YouTube, when they render the replay after, the audio quality degrades slightly, I've noticed. Now I'm turning off original sound. I'm going to go back in. And these are just some basic things you can hear. I'm going to automatically adjust my microphone volume. You probably don't notice a difference there because my volume was already set to max. Now I've unchecked it. I'm lowering my volume input so that it's really low. You probably have a hard time hearing me. Now I'm going to click automatically adjust microphone volume, and I can see Zoom already trying to adjust my volume by raising that volume so that it's a little higher so that you can hear me better. So many different ways to monkey around with this. Back to my slideshow here. I think I've covered everything there. In the regular Zoom screen, when you have original sound on, you have to toggle the bar at the top left corner of the screen that says turn original sound on or turn original sound off. This gets confusing in the exam situation. 90% of the time on an exam, you want original sound on so that we can hear the piano clearly. It opens up the microphone wide open with no adjustments so that we can hear everything in the room. And that's what it takes to get Zoom to pay attention to the piano, for instance. Sometimes while a student's talking, especially during ear training, I won't be able to hear them so well when original sound's off. I can hear the piano playing very well, but I might not hear them very well. So there are times where I'll ask them to turn original sound off so that I can hear their voice better. When you have original sound on, you also won't hear my spoken voice very well. And so during ear training, this is one of those things where we're both toggling on and off in certain situations, depending on how the connection is working on the different pieces of hardware we're using, with original sound to be able to hear each other talk. That's the other battle that we're after here when that happens. Okay, so someone's noticing there's definitely been a change to your voice. It went a bit reedy after you made all the changes, and then I adjusted the mic volume. Even with the mic up to full, it made a difference to how I sound. Yeah, so that's just a very basic change. I'll show you some more interesting changes here too. It can be difficult to broadcast your talking voice with original sound. I've mentioned that. And during ear training, turning original sound off can make it easier to hear the examiner. If a student has original sound on, and I'm playing a playback exercise at the piano, they're actually going to have a hard time hearing me, even though my original sound's on. Original sound is better if it's a one-way, I've noticed. If students have original sound off, they can hear my original sound better. This is confusing, but try it out. And I won't be able to try it with you today because I don't have a live participant, but try this when you practice these things at home or test them out, and you'll notice that. Original sound can be used with some iPads and iPhones, but not all. And some students simply can't find that setting. If you can't find it, then your iPhone or iPad's not enabled for that feature on your particular version of Zoom. So if the iPad is determined to be your best device, make sure you have the latest version of Zoom and get familiar with where to find that original sound setting. For some people, it's not while you're using the app. You have to actually get out of a meeting and go into the app's settings. Sometimes the setting is right in the meeting app when you're live in a meeting. So get familiar with using original sound when on a mobile device, if that's what you determine is best to use. Older Google Chromebooks do not work well with Zoom. I think the new ones we're noticing, but the old ones are absolutely tragic. It was the worst thing ever invented for piano exams. And for most of those students that only had a Chromebook, we ended up doing those exams over the phone. Your settings will be different when connecting with different people. So whatever setting you arrange with your teacher is going to get you very close. As soon as you connect with an examiner, someone else somewhere else in the world who has different hardware, etc., they may need to tweak your volume setting a little bit so that they can hear you even better than the teacher could. Maybe it depends. So always be prepared that whatever settings you arrive at with your teacher, that may change in real life when you get to the exam, depending on who you're connecting with. Examiners are trained to take the time to reset and adjust these settings as necessary, but we'd like to cut down on that time where possible. Okay, let's go back now. I want to test some of these settings out just so you can hear the difference that it makes. And right now I'm set up here with a good podcasting microphone in front of me. And I meant to get it. Just one second. I'm going to grab another microphone here. And I also want to test this with iPhone and iPad. I've got those logged in here as well so that we can hear the difference between the three and the difference that will make to someone's sound. So right now, this is my podcasting microphone. It's geared to spoken voice. I have to be relatively close to it to make a difference. And right now, when it comes to Zoom audio settings, let me just get back into there. Right now, I have automatically adjust. Oh, no, I'm going to take off the automatically adjust microphone volume. I'm going to set my mic where it usually works really best at 90% of its input volume. I'm going to have original sound on. So I'm doing all the right things. You should notice a little difference now in my spoken voice. Original sound on. There's no auto adjusting. The mic level's at a good level. But I'm using a podcast mic. This is not going to pick up the ambient sound in the room very well. So I'm going to play a little thing at the piano and just listen to the difference, or we can use that as a benchmark. Go ahead and throw in the chat box what you're hearing there. It'll give me some feedback. I don't know what I'm hearing because I haven't tested this setup yet, but I suspect a little bit hard to hear there. I'm going to do the same thing now with a slightly worse setup. Original sound off. Still no auto adjusting though. Automatically adjust microphone volume is also off. So Zoom's not adjusting, but just taking original sound off should make a bit of a difference. But I suspect overall, the volume's actually, or what's coming across is probably not very good because I'm using a mic that's not working really well, I don't think, anyway, for music. Okay, the first time was easier to hear. The second was very broken with a lot of missed notes. That's right, because I took original sound off. Now this little mic is, instead of optimized for my voice, it's opened up to the whole room. Now it's not opened up to the whole room, and it's not auto adjusting. If I auto adjust now and say automatically adjust microphone volume, on top of not having original sound on, listen to, and if anything happens here. So that's that setup. Now what I want to do is just show you the difference between that and a USB microphone. This is a Blue Yeti that I've got here that I used to use for podcasting more, but now I only use it when I'm doing Zoom exams, for example. I'll go to my usual setup. So you won't hear me for a second here. Okay, I think that microphone's working. Yeah, different. You may be hearing me quite a bit differently now I'm just going to uncheck automatically adjust microphone volume, or actually, no, I'm going to keep adjusting the microphone volume automatically. Original sound is off. I'm going to turn original sound on. Okay, so original sound on, but it's automatically adjusted my microphone volume, and I'm using a better microphone for music. Here's what we get. Maybe improvement, maybe not, but if I uncheck adjust microphone volume and I set my mic volume a little bit higher, I suspect this is where I want to be. Typically, I've got my input volume at 90%. I'm adjusting it manually, not automatically. We've got original sound on, as I just did, and this should make it a little bit more difference even still to the expression that an examiner can hear. That's my usual setup that I have found probably works the best. And when I listen to the replay and get your feedback here in the chat box, that'll help me verify what is working best on my end. Now, I would like, here we got some in the chat there. What are you finding, everybody? Okay. Sounds like we're in the same room, dynamics much clearer. First one has sounded good. Okay, you're all confirming this for me. There's a bit of an echo now, isn't there? The last one sounds worse than the previous one. There was some background sound and echoing. Yeah, okay, that's interesting. So when I automatically adjusted microphone volume, it was better. It could also have been because I upped my input volume on the microphone. If I lower my input volume to 70%, that might cut down on the echo cancellation. But you can see the variables. I haven't tested this in about a year. I just started assuming that everything's working well. But because Zoom is always changing how it's working, and even though this setup is what I normally use, you just never know what's actually influencing it. And so there are so many variables. I want to test it as well with the iPad and also the iPhone. Someone there is saying, make sure the gain isn't set too high on the Yeti. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's something that I've always adjusted as well. That's another variable that gets you into it too, that you can get complicated with quite quickly. Okay, so I'm going to go to audio on a different device with the iPad. I have it. You're not going to see my video on the iPad necessarily from the iPad, but my microphone's fairly close to the piano. It's just going to take me a second to mute myself. Okay, so now I'm coming to you from the iPad. I'm at risk of a loop developing. The feedback's coming because I have 3 devices already. Not quite letting me use. Okay, there, that should end the feedback, I think. So here, I'm just going to give an example just straight from the iPad. I don't even know what the settings are at the moment. Not sure. Go ahead and throw in the chat box. What are we hearing there from the iPad? Meanwhile, in the iPad, I've kind of defined it like this. I'm sure they have somewhere in that, but not the configuration I'm using. Doesn't let me. I think it doesn't have settings. There's 2 settings in that. Control. I'm not seeing when the audio comes down.
Yeah, so that's the risk what I find using an iPad is you don't necessarily have control over the audio settings, depending on what version you're using of the iPad. Lots of feedback. Yeah, you know what, definitely not as good as the Yeti, quite broken. Right. So that's what I suspected. I want to go over and try the iPhone. 1 second here.
Okay, so now I'm coming to you through the iPhone audio, very small microphone. You're telling me it was broken, very broken up on the iPad. We'll see how the iPhone does, and people like this better sound right away. Let's see what it does. I'm going to actually do a couple of things. I'm going to keep a little bit of distance. I've got it on the edge of a table close by here so that the microphone's hanging over the edge of the table, so it's not going to pick up vibrations off the table or anything. Let's just see how that sounds. So my spoken voice apparently sounded better than the iPad. What did that sound like set up there? Piano, not good at all. Right. And so I'm also going to try the iPhone right on the dash of the piano. A lot of people like to do this. They put the iPhone right on the dash so that they can get a view of the camera is looking right down the keys. And then the audio is right there. And a lot of people do recordings like this for YouTube and things like that using the iPhone. Here's what the audio would sound like in that case with my device. Could be better, could be worse, but I suspect more or less the same issues. Can I find original sound? Yeah, the same issues, definitely. Can I find settings here on the iPhone for audio? No, I can't. Some people can, but it's tricky. I know it's quite tricky to find those, and the odd student is able to do it, but it's usually because they've logged out and got into the app settings when they're not actually in a meeting, which is inconvenient to say the least. So that gives you a little idea. Right now, I'm just coming to you through the iPhone. It sounds like the iPhone audio gives more or less the same issues. You can't hear it all. Yeah, most of your others are saying you can't really hear on the iPhones. The iPhone's giving me good quality of sound with my spoken voice, better than the iPad Pro. So iPad Pro is what I'm using for the iPad. That's only less than 2 years old. The iPhone is an SE, just a middle of the road iPhone that's 2 years old as well. So I'm just going to take a second here to go back to a better audio for what we're doing today. Thanks for the warning there. I realized you couldn't hear me. I forgot to unmute the microphone when I plugged it back into the laptop. So you can see some of the issues here that we've got with this situation where the mobile devices don't work very well, point blank. They just don't, they don't give you that kind of sound. And that's half the time when we log in with an exam student, that's what we're hearing. We're hearing this broken version of the piano, and the exam just can't simply proceed, and we have to find another device that works better. And then eventually we usually get it to work. Some of the newer iPhones, iPhone 12, 13, 14, I believe you can enable original sound, and I've seen the iPhone work in some cases better than the laptop. Just depends on what you have and what condition that microphone is in. These things hang out in our pockets all the time, a lot of people, and so you can get fuzz, pocket fuzz in the microphone, I'm convinced. Sometimes you can actually clean that out, but it doesn't take much to corrupt a microphone on any device, really, from what I can tell. So other e-exam considerations, be prepared to print the sight reading tests when they are emailed just before the exam or shared on the screen with the examiner. And students, just a reminder, students must not practice or see those tests before the exam. That's a big no-no. And then the skills tests must be discarded, thrown away after the exam so that nobody else sees them. Parents can be present in the background to assist with the technology. We appreciate that where that is necessary, or a good safety net, just as long as there's no coaching from the background. And then reserve a quiet area and time for the exam where there are no distractions, no background noise, no interruptions. Sometimes we see that from time to time. There's someone in the kitchen in the background making noise with pots and pans, and that sucks the life out of your microphone, especially if original sound is enabled, and that can ruin the exam experience for what the examiner's hearing up close. Have the webcam aimed at the student from the side, showing the torso and perhaps even the pedal if you can get it, so that we can see and have a better idea how the pedal is working with the student and they're playing. And avoid excess email communication with the examiner. Just keep it to answering their questions that they ask you in their initial emails and sharing scores as necessary. That's about it for the technical part of this. Those of you that have heard about digital badges before, I'm just going to mention them for a moment because we have a wider audience here today. Appreciate the parents that have joined in today to check this out. And those of you that are watching this after the fact on the YouTube channel. We do these webinars every Friday at noon Eastern, or roughly every Friday. They're aimed at teachers, but once in a while we have webinars of interest for all people. We have a webinar coming up next week. Eleanor Gummer and Cecile DeRosier are going to present on the music of Louise Farrenc. They have going through the last couple of years a series of music by women and BIPOC composers that were forgotten or suppressed throughout history. Eleanor is involved in publishing these works. And so next week, they're going to continue their series looking at that music, her Opus 50 Etude specifically. October 20th, we may be taking that Friday off. In fact, I'm just not quite sure yet. And then October 27th, another webinar of interest to families will be Roland Canada. I have Dan Amarim, a representative from Roland Canada, is going to come to talk about their FPE 50 new digital piano that's very feature rich, a really affordable price for what you get. And he's going to talk about some other tech that teachers might be interested in when it comes to either online teaching or studio enhancement. So I hope you can join us for those webinars. Also, some exciting webinars coming up in November. I've got the couple that have created the Piano Safari method. They're going to be joining us on the first Friday of November. And then beyond that, watch your email inbox for other information. I've been booking webinars throughout November and into December now already too. Digital badges. Just very quickly, you can check this out on our website, anyone that's interested. There are those students that slip through the cracks. They're not able to necessarily put all of that time and commitment in nowadays to an exam every year, or if at all in that case. And this is a nice way to have them involved in assessments to create a performance goal for themselves. It eliminates the pressure of live performance. Students can have control over creating their ideal performances. And what they do is they pre-record 3 pieces of music that they're working on with their teacher in advance, anytime throughout the year. They can record them as many times as they're like until they're happy with it. That process itself, I find, is a great learning tool. Students learn to be good self-critics. And they learn to really take ownership over their performances, and they don't have to submit it until they're happy with it and they get it right. The examiner goes in and listens to the 3 pieces on video and makes really helpful comments. The examiner can assess really fairly and listen to it multiple times to make sure they get the assessment right. They don't have to compare it to anybody else in the room at a festival, but the detailed adjudication that's written is quite rich and helpful, we find, giving them next steps to work on and praising them for everything that they're doing well. The commitment level is much less than a full exam. It's a great way to fill in a gap where a student wants to feel like they've achieved the level, but they're ready to move on for different reasons. The feedback given is more detailed. Students learn to self-critique their own work, which I've already mentioned. And then it provides a realistic step, I think, for most students to start with assessments if they're not familiar with how it works, or they want to try something as a means of getting feedback to do the exam later. Many different applications and uses for it. So we hope you'll check that out. When students are successful, they either get a gold, silver, or bronze standing. And you can see what the badge looks like at the top right of the screen there. A really attractive looking badge. And this is for levels 1 to 10. They also have complete control over the music that they choose. Our CCTV YouTube channel, some of us are watching there already on the live stream. You can register to attend these webinars every Friday and live through Zoom webinar where you can ask questions live. The replays live on the channel. They're divided into different playlists. And you can check those out and see if you can figure out how they go. I won't demonstrate that today because I've shown you that before. And then we have contact information. Our registrar is Deborah Hawthorne. She works at our office in London, Ontario. There's a 1-800 number there. You can reach her. The best way to reach her, in fact, is by email, but she does check the voicemail regularly. And then I'm in Thunder Bay, Ontario, and you can reach me, Derek, at conservatorycanada.ca. Check out our website, conservatorycanada.ca. All of our exam syllabi are there. Information and links to the YouTube channel, to digital badge syllabus information, to the new teacher and student portals. We've been using those for a year now. And you'll notice that when students get their exam results back, they're coming back lightning fast in most cases. That's because of our new digital examiner portal. So things are moving forward here. We're really enjoying bringing you the webinars. All the best for the academic year. Hope teachers, your teaching is going well in your studios. Parents, thanks for joining us and joining those of you who have watched this after the fact. We hope you can check out more of these webinars. And if you have any suggestions for what you'd like to see in this space, please let me know and we'll do our best. So thanks for your attention, everybody. I hope you found this helpful. Email us your questions and hopefully we'll see you next Friday. Bye for now.